Oh. Driveway. How much snow you guys got down there? You got?
Yeah, we got a decent amount. We got a foot in that last good one.
Okay.
Words, I guess, right?
Then we got another 2 or 3 that week, so
Really?
kind of that Christmas Eve break.
Sure, yeah.
We need it.
I agree. Something to fill up the lakes again.
Yeah. It's nice out there riding.
Is it? I
I hear
bet.
you beast at like 29.
You were in the yard riding?
Oh, you came through the yard. Yeah, we stopped in there one day and, you guys were gone. Or you must have been already gone. Or
Yeah.
something. So then they put them like, no, it's just, and then of course they want to move around there a little bit.
Yeah.
We still never went sliding because it's been so freaking cold, you know,
Yeah.
but, so.
That's fine, you can ride there whenever.
All right, at 6 o'clock, I'll ask everyone to stand and say the pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. 11 minutes reflect, we've got a quorum. Mike, Scott, Josh, and Sean are all here. First item of business is citizen forum. If anyone from the community would like to address the council, now would be the time to do so. We are live on our Facebook page and on YouTube tonight for the first time, so we'll give it just a couple seconds here. You guys gather yourselves. We got time. Perfect.
You can see the chair that like our guest is in.
Where Tyson's gonna sit?
He can step over one tonight.
You know, you can see all the levels and all that stuff, like the viewfinder stuff on it. Like what's on the viewfinder is what's on the Facebook feed.
I have it set up as Facebook and YouTube separately right now.
Oh, okay, so,
Yeah, because I wanted to test out our YouTube page
okay.
first,
so
but I
it's-
have YouTube Live as well. I just haven't linked it to the Facebook page. Eventually, I'd like to get rid of the Facebook one and just do YouTube and link it, but I wanted to make sure that a full meeting worked and there was no glitches. And our Boxcast system lets us actually put both, so.
So with that being said, if anyone watches the meeting tonight on any platform, let any of the council members know or Ashley and myself know any feedback would be greatly appreciated. Moving on to the consent agenda, you got one change on letter C. The accounts payable number changes to $56,916.65. Again, 56,916, period, .65. Do I have a motion to approve? Okay, I got a motion from Josh, second from Sean, all in favor? Aye. All opposed, motion passes. Under the agenda, I have two additions. Under the department head reports, add number 4. And it'll be the history of fires in North County via Ted Allenson. And then under new business, letter D, Brady Mart's audit contract. Are there any more additions to the agenda? If none, I need a approval. Do I have a motion? Okay, motion from Mike, second from Scott, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. First up, Tyson, more engineering.
Good evening. I don't really have anything too formal to talk about, but what I did want to talk about is kind of what's coming up and coming off of the CIP planning that the city did and looking ahead at the 2023 projects that are on the docket. And so, just kind of recapping back, you know, we're talking about sewer rehab and to the collection, the replacement to the sewer collection system. And then really was the Raggy addition with the 2 projects that came out of that were identified to be done in 2023. So One thing that's coming down the pike, and really from the RAE perspective, I won't touch much on that today. That can kind of come about whenever throughout the year, and of course as we lead into going into next year, right? That project is kind of standalone, it's a development project, it kind of will carry its own course. When we look at the sewer rehab though, that really gets tied to, and we're in line for funding through Public Facilities Authority. And what's coming down the line right now is, through PFA, you know, this, what they're coining as the bill money through infrastructure, from the federal government is coming down and being applied to, the clean water and the drinking water revolving loan funds at the state level. And that money isn't gonna happen this year. It's most likely gonna come, you know, and be a part of the next, IUPU cycle, which would be in the 2023 and the next year. But what that's gonna do is, it's gonna, when that money basically infuses, it's gonna draw down and it's gonna extend the grant. And it's going to, but it's not gonna change primarily how the programs work. And so it's gonna, everything's still gonna be based on affordability, everything is still going to be, function the way it functions today. It'll just allow a lot more projects to be funded most likely because there'll be a lot more money in the pot. One thing we're looking at though is what's coming with that is if you're familiar with American Iron and Steel or Buy American, there are gonna be strict Buy American requirements that we're being told that are coming with this. I've run preliminary numbers with respect to the city, and if you look at the facility plan and the need for across the sewer as a whole, we've got a large need, right? You know, we're probably talking $14 to $16 million if you did one big project and fixed everything, right? We've taken a chunk off of that when we did one of the lift station projects, and now kind of the next piece of it was to go through and look at the sewer rehab and say, okay, let's take care of the really bad sewer that we've got around town, so we don't have collapses and major failures. These are the ones that Ryan stays up at night worrying about. And then we're in line and we're in a funding queue for that project, and the thing I wanna talk about today is to basically give you information and kind of see how you wanna proceed. I'll give you my opinion on which way I think we should go. Basically, this Buy American is gonna hit within the next, they're saying within 6 months of when President Biden signed the bill for the infrastructure package, that is gonna get rolled out, and this Buy American is going to be incorporated into anything that uses federal dollars. What federal dollars are infused in, and it's gonna become part of this program. And from what we're hearing from the financial institutions, which is PFA, they're saying that the Buy American is going to be general across the board on everything. So it's not, Buy American used to be just American, it was called American Iron and Steel is the way it is today. So any steel products that are incorporated with any of our projects, gate valves, the bolts, fittings, stuff like that, anything that's steel related, it has to be certified as American made or manufactured, assembled, or whatever the requirement is. So this is gonna broaden everything, or mostly everything, which is, don't get me wrong, is a great thing, right? Reinvest the money back locally and do what it should do. The only problem that may come in is it's probably going to, at least in the first cycles, is going to increase cost, it's going to potentially increase delays. We don't know how it'll impact, but it's gonna have an impact. And really primarily, if we were in this initial phase and wanting to get loan forgiveness or grant, I'd be talking a lot, I'd be saying, well, let's just wait, let's let this money hit, and then let's go after the grant. Problem is in our first cycle or first 2 cycles, as we build up to affordability, we're not gonna be grant eligible. And that's just a fact, and, you know, we're gonna have to build to that. And if you're not, familiar with how the affordability system works, you can generally explain it, but essentially what happens is there is, based on the median household income that's gonna be set by the state for the city, they have a threshold at which they're saying that an average user can pay for their sewer and for their water utilities. Once we get to that affordability, based on debt, what it costs you for operation and maintenance, and what a new project would cost that you're taking on, and you roll all that in, you get to that affordability threshold and you become grant eligible. And that grant eligibility is based on how much money's in is available, what projects are ahead of you, how you rank, there's a lot of criteria that plays into it. What's gonna help with that is that having the infusion in that over the next 5 years is gonna help draw that number down, to make more projects get into that affordability. But the problem we have initially is that there's not a ton of debt on your books, and as we move forward, we're gonna have to build to affordability before we get there. And so, we're not advocating that we're gonna do a $12 million project and let's just hit it in one fall swoop. We're gonna build into it. You're still gonna be able to maintain your preference, and the way that the facility plan is structured is that we can take bite-sized pieces, and you're not losing your ability for loan forgiveness or for grant. You're just building towards it. There are caveats that play in as new census data comes out over years, and as as median household incomes rise and fall, that affects your ability or how much they deem you can afford. But I don't see that moving dramatically, from now into the next 4 to 5 years, right? And so, the only thing I'm looking at today is saying, we have a chance and a window to possibly get in ahead of this Buy American coming down the pipe. There's no guarantee. I talked to PFA, I talked to them actually yesterday, and they're not sure, as it sits today, and then with the guidance they've been getting, they don't know whether or not in 6 months, so when we hit May or so, that it won't go retroactive to every project that's on the books and that's using that funding. There may be a waiver that comes out. We did, when ERA came out, when we had the project under Obama, that was true stimulus. There was a waiver at that point that allowed projects that were already in the queue to a certain point to move on without it. And this would really only apply to the rehab, because the rate addition, that's why I'm saying, is there's the sense of urgency is great with that one. The way I'll boil it out is, from the city's perspective, I think we can structure this that you'd be net neutral from a risk perspective. And what I mean by that is, you didn't want to take the project on and you want to make sure you're not paying any debt until 2023, because that's when your other debt service is falling off and when this would come on. And so I think we can still take a look at this window, try to capitalize on it, and worst case is we just roll this into next year, and no harm, no foul. With bidding and construction, but there is a chance we could structure this to happen in this cycle in this year and still maintain that you're not gonna see any of the debt payment until next year anyway, because through how the operation of the program works, they're not gonna close the loan, the debt service won't kick in until after construction is completed anyway. So, and as a part of how we can structure it is we can basically say, the work's gonna be done anyway, let's do it, let's basically bring it ahead and do it now. We'll hold the bag for you basically through the cycle until the funding becomes available and ensure that you don't have to see anything coming until 2023 anyway. But you get an opportunity to look at, to get in the cycle and see if we can get ahead of this. And if we don't have to have those requirements as a part of this project, it's gonna benefit the project. To what degree, I don't know. But, I mean, if we were sitting there stacked up with grant, I'd say, well, let's not worry about it right now. But if we can take something that we're gonna otherwise do in 6 or 8 months, right, and we can just escalate it, do it now, and get it in the queue, and have it ready, what's the difference?
I guess my only thought on it, Tyson, is we've talked a little bit at this table about that is, we do have those bonds expiring in 2023. Just because we have bonds expiring in 2023 doesn't mean we start bonds in 2023 or sooner, unless it's needed. And again, you go back to, I guarantee, same as you, Brian, sits up at night thinking about this stuff because it's imminent. A lot of it is. At what cost to the city to get the ball rolling on this would you be looking for? I mean, as far as anything.
Really, we'd be following the same premise that was talked about in what would happen in that was coming down the pipe for your 2023 project, right? So rough numbers, we were, if you included the sewer and the rating, I'm just talking, my aggregate numbers, it was $2.4 million. right? And so, if you did both of those projects and they went through basically as it's estimated, that's what would have been done, to be prepared for the 2023 construction season. Whether you choose to do RIDE down the line or not, that'll be a choice you'll make on a different day, unrelated really to the sewer replacement project. The sewer project, construction-wise, it's all aggregated up to 2.4, roughly, it was $1 million in construction, or 1.1 million in construction. Really, from the perspective of today, the only thing that I would come forward is I basically, if you're comfortable entertaining it, we would move forward. I'll bring basically a proposal in, so you understand, that'll follow what we're talking about. And then we'll put that proposal would have our engineering in it. And then we'll basically hold that engineering cost through the year. And then we'll roll it in to the program, so that it works in 2023.
So, no, we're talking about sewer project
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus the street project. Yeah, when I went to the street project, I would be like, if we do the second big project.
So in 25, and then 27 was, that would be.
What he presented was as our improvement plan.
What did council approve last month for?
They approved to move forward with it based, yes, based on getting it on, the PFA and moving forward, not necessarily moving forward with the project, but moving forward with getting it on the list.
No, but up to $20, I think.
Really so what Dan came in with last month was saying, hey, it was like up, I think he said up to $7,000.
Wasn't there
Yeah.
And really what that boils down to was, I started looking at it, Dan and I started looking at it, and as I looked at it, I'm like, well, if we really boil this down, why, we've already basically done the math, we've done the numbers, we kind of know what the threshold of the dollar amount is that up to what the city really wants to spend, we're backing into a number from a construction standpoint. We're already listed on the funding site, and we're eligible to apply right now. And that application window holds until March. But to apply, we have to put the loan application together, and we have to put the plans and specs together to meet that deadline, and then what they do is certify.
And I
And I
think
think that's where that $7,000 came from.
What he was looking at was to say, hey, let's look at what it would take to restructure, to look at what a project would be and whether we have to do any more engineering study, brush numbers up, and to figure out where we're at. For the most part, I'm saying, let's not, I don't think from that perspective, we really have to spend any of that money to do it, because we've really already done it. And really what he was looking at was saying, hey, I just wanna make sure that if we have to go back and start to do a bunch of work in order to get us into a position where we can get somewhere, that we can just do what we need to do, come back and present it. Well, kinda when we went and looked at the numbers, it really, we've kinda done it. It's really more of, you can wait and just say, you know what, I mean, there's nothing wrong with waiting and saying, you know what, we're gonna hold the 2023 schedule, that'll put us into the next cycle, we'll re-up our intended use plan placement at the end of this year, late summer, and then that will put us into the 2023 cycle, and we'll be looking at that following season to do work. And then whatever information comes down, with the new regulations, will be applied, and away we go.
But you mentioned the regulations, they could definitely increase our project quite a bit, depending on what the regulations
It
are.
depends on what they are. That Buy American is, anytime you infuse Buy American, and everybody's gonna be vying for the funding in the next round, because there's gonna be, there's stimulus that's gonna be in there, so projects are going to stack, and more are gonna be funded, and more are gonna have the opportunity to get done, right? And so it's going to saturate the market from a perspective of workloads, this is nationwide. And this Buy American hits every program that has federal dollars, so Rural Development's gonna get it, Public Facilities Authority's gonna get it. Anybody that uses federal dollars is gonna have to abide by the same rules. But we have a window where we're going, there's a possibility that we cannot, at least in this cycle, not have to be encumbered by those. And if, you know what, and if in the next couple of months, as we're moving down the line, we see that it's really not gonna impact us or not, we can pump the brakes. It doesn't change anything that we're otherwise gonna do. Really, what I'm here asking is to say, let's escalate the timetable to earlier in the year to now. Yeah, you're gonna be net neutral whether you start it now, or whether you do it in, you know, we waited until August or September to say, okay, now we're ready, let's go. Worst case is we're there, and if we wanna shelf it, we'll shelf it, and we'll wait until the time is right to bid, and we'll bid, and like I said, we've done it on a lot of projects with the city where we'll hold, you know, we'll meet with the city, we'll hold the leg, and when the time is right, we'll move forward.
Well, I think that was one of my questions, for Dan last month, as far as the refreshing. We know what our sewer system was like after they're scoped. Was it last summer?
Well, it was an 18.
And,
Time for it.
yeah, it's one of those things, how long do we wait before someone requires us to go back in there and get a new look? When we have what's in there already.
Yeah, and really, you know, we, the stuff that's in there, it's not like all of a sudden you're just gonna have catastrophic failure system. I mean, that's not gonna happen, but we are getting to the point where we've got enough mineral deposits in some lines we couldn't get through, and those get bigger and bigger and bigger every year, and you just get things that happen and they cost more, and at some point you take what you could have done in a relining project where you could have reamed it out, relined it, sealed it up, and then you gotta dig it. You know, and that's where, once we start having to dig, then it gets a lot more expensive. You know, from the perspective of what we're looking at here, we're really reverse calculating the cost into what we're gonna do is say, you know, we're comfortable on taking on X amount of debt, we're gonna back in and try to get, we're gonna eliminate the worst of the worst, and then we'll continue to chip away and deal with it as we move forward, instead of trying to take on, you know, that way, you're not having to significantly raise rates in order to compensate and take these projects. At some point, at some point, in order to finish the project and actually correct the deficiencies within the system, the city will need to get to that affordability rate. If you wanna be grant eligible, it's about the timing of when you do it. There's no magic answer. It's very much dependent on how you want to approach taking the projects on. There doesn't usually get to a point in time, if you look at any community that's actually, you know, you can look at rate structures almost, and I can tell you whether they've done a major project in the community and have anybody that's paying $10 a month for sewer or water in their community is a system that's a ticking time bomb, and if you actually look at it, probably needs a lot of work. I mean, it's that simple. It's probably aging old, but no, that doesn't mean that they can't get by with it, but at some point, you're gonna pay a piper, right? You gotta update. So, it just depends on how you want to approach it.
Questions, comments from council? Although I need a motion to let Tyson kind of move forward with this and expedite the timeline.
And really, just to be clear on kind of the process, because this is where it always gets sticky. What we would be looking to do right now is basically we'll identify the project, we would go into design, and we would start making an application to Public Facilities Authority. We'll bring that application back to the city, and you will know definitively before we actually apply for anything, and before, really, you're never locked into a project until we bid and award a construction contract. At that point,
That's what we did with the other ones, and we waited because the bids came back too high.
and so, just so you're aware, it's not like all of a sudden you're not ripping the Band-Aid off tonight to say, yep, we're off and running. But I think there is benefit to expediting, at least from your perspective, there's only upside at this point.
Tyson, we'd see something in our February meeting or March meeting.
Well, it'll be February.
Yeah,
because
due by
we
March.
gotta do it right here. So what we'll be doing is working through January. We'll have probably some things that we need passed at the February meeting to make for the application, and if we can expedite, the sooner we can get in ahead of the March, the better. And what will happen is PFA will start to process their own application and get their part of it moving, and then we'll be pushing information into the MPC at the time. Really what we want is we want to get to certification So, but what I'm hoping is we get to a point where we hit a fail-safe where they look at us and they go, no, you've come too far, we're not gonna go back and make you do a bunch of rework in order to meet these requirements. And so, yep, if you're fine, continue on with your project and.
How many dollars do you think, you've been talking anywhere from $1 million to $2 million, what, I mean, where do you think the guy, how high do you think the guy can go, in this situation? Not obviously the 12 million, but I mean, what number does Brian have a number on how many things we should try to get done, like now,
So kind of talking back, yeah, when you looked at your CIP planning, 2023, you looked at about $2.4 million project between the two.
And that would be, if we were gonna use all of our retired debt,
Yep.
that payment would cover about a $2.4, $2.2 million project, and it would just replace those funds. Now, we talked about maybe not wanting to tie up all of that money, but with this, we're not having to raise rates, we're not having to raise, anything, because it'll be strictly replacing what we already had in debt. But again, we have talked about not wanting to tie up the total $2.4 million in there, so it's another thing we discussed as far as maybe fire trucks and other things coming down the line too.
Right.
But you said the $2.4 million is including the radiation, it's not just the sewer, so the radiation we decide to do down the road too, we don't have to do it. And then, yeah, and then if you remember, in 2025, we have about the same amount of debt retiring, and then in 2027, about the same as well. So then, if we do projects in those years, we're not having to raise rates. I mean, we've been raising rates to help plan for these types of things, but
Oh, yeah.
we won't have to do a substantial amount.
And so it's kind of taking that, which was good, and it was the intent of looking at that, going through that CIP process was to say, initially, we came back and we looked and we said, what the facility planning process did about 30 years ago or 4 years ago was basically looking at the system as a whole, on the water and the sewer side, and saying, okay, if we were to fix everything, what's the total cost that it would take? And then basically putting ourselves in a position to be eligible for funding assistance to do that. You can chisel away at that as much or as little as you want over the course of time, and they basically, we just keep re-upping on that, within that cycle, and that is through the Public Facilities Authority. And so we've, this would kind of be the second phase of a major project, because obviously the water tower and the lift station projects were kind of the first project that's been taken on. But really, system-wise, we really haven't touched the project other than what was done with respect to the flood, the flood improvements that were done since pre-2006. The water, we had a pretty significant water main project that was done in the mid-early 2000s. But outside of that, it's been, we really haven't touched the system at all, which is really relatively a good thing, right? And we want to do it in a practical manner where we're looking at condition of roads, we're looking at condition of utilities, we're making smart assessments on how we're fixing it, versus the last thing we want to do is reline usually good utilities or bad utilities under a bad road, or dig up a good road because we've got really bad utilities and we didn't catch it. So we kind of want to time those things out as best we can to make sure that we're doing it in a manner that it gives the best benefit from a money perspective to the city, because there's no good way to pay for road projects, right? We all know that. The street is the toughest part to pay for, but at least if you have bad utilities under streets, you can get financial help at least to cover a portion of the costs. We get blessed with a very wide street. We can land planes on some of the roads that are in town, but that comes as a blessing, but it's also reconstructing those, it comes with a price tag.
Well, I just don't want to be short either, I mean, if you think the project,
And I think-
Brian have an idea how many, what it's gonna take on this first phase, I mean, yeah, I don't wanna be short either. So-
Yeah, and that's partially what we'll, you know, as we look at, as we're backing into this number, you know, we'll be looking at, the first and foremost, what we'll be looking at is what are the things that we absolutely wanna get, make sure we get that done.
Right.
And then it's kinda, you go back to, okay, then what are the wish list items, and what we're trying to do in these is, inevitably, we're gonna have point repair spots where we're gonna have to dig it down. So we just, that's inevitability. What we're trying not to do, at least within these initial phases, unless it's really bad and we have to, is just having to dig blocks. Because that gets expensive really fast. And so what we wanna do is we're looking at rehabbing this, the majority of the sanitary system as much as we can without having to open cut. And that's kind of the goal in this intermediate phase. But we do know we got some bad areas, you know, South Fourth Avenue, right by the big, the main station. That's a bad stretch there. So we can only do homes so much. That's all.
Well, I make a proposal, you come with a proposal next month if you could on, you know, a number there for us, please.
Yeah, so what I'll be coming with, well, a little bit what I'll ask for tonight is basically, we're gonna get moving, so I'm gonna kinda, I'll take the risk and we'll move it forward. I'll get a proposal back that we'll officially ratify in conjunction with everything in February, but I'm gonna basically get moving. So that I can bring a bunch of information back at that February meeting in order to be in March. And then I'll, over the next 2 weeks, I'll be sending you information.
Yeah.
Because we're moving forward, and so that can be disseminated, but it'll be, like I said, the biggest thing is we'll make sure you're not gonna incur any of the cost in 2022, we'll wait until, we'll structure everything so that it doesn't hit until 2023.
Which is kind of what we talked about last month too.
And then what we'll be able to find out too is, part of what we'll bring forward at that next one, at that, you know, in February, will be a truer estimate of what we think it's really gonna take.
Okay. So I got a motion from Mike, second from Josh. Any further discussion or questions for Tyson? Ashley, anything to add? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes.
What's outside of that, unless you've got any questions for me?
So,
Thank you. Happy New Year.
yep, you as well too. All right, moving on to mayor's report. Second month in a row, I just want to talk about 2022 elections. Again, we have 4 council members, the mayor's seat open. Names will be due sometime in the beginning of August. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Committee members, probably one of my few powers as mayor is appointing committees throughout the city. We have 5 committees. I'm gonna put some names and some lists together by our February council meeting for the council to approve. We have some committee members that are deciding to no longer be involved, so we are looking for active members amongst all the committees. I'll have Ashley post something tomorrow.
I'll sign you up for the radio to talk about committee as well.
Perfect. When am I doing that?
The Did You Know with Kevin.
Oh, okay. I'll get old Kevin then. Thank you. Perfect. The committees are a great way to get introduced to the council, to the political activity of this community. I was also thinking about it yesterday as I was talking to a community member. John's got zero patience. It's a great way for community members to reach out to these community members if they're not comfortable reaching out to Ashley, myself, or the council members. These community members are family members, they're friends, and sometimes they're easier to talk to. So the more voices that we can get on these committees, the more we can listen to the issues that are going on throughout the city. Whether it's blight, whether it's fences, whether it's parking ordinances, whether it's anything. Unless we hear feedback from the community, we can't address those issues. So these committees are a great way to do that. I would encourage anybody that's looking to get involved to contact myself, contact Ashley, or one of the council members. I can kind of give you a idea of what's expected. Most communities only meet once a month, some are quarterly, once are, or one of them's every 6 months, so we're not talking a huge time commitment, but again, it's a great way to give back to the community, so. That's all I got for that. Administrator clerk treasury report.
Couple updates, so the big thing is the Decker Center. First thing I want to point out is we put the liner on ice rink a couple weeks ago, and we had over 40 volunteers. It was awesome. Our department was out there, school came out, there was like 17 kids in school, lots of council members out there. So it was really great to see. It was the first time putting it out. Was a process. I think we went through what, 13, 14, 15 fire truck loads of water, something like that. One thing to note, it is something we have to do every year. So hopefully we get as much help then, but it's out there, and then of course, after the day after we filled it, it snowed for 5 inches, and created a blanket, and then we're gonna do stuff. So, it did get cleared off, well, got cleared off yesterday, so it's gonna snow again today, but, we hope to get it, we hope to get it, a new layer of ice on there by the weekend and get it going, so, the weather doesn't help. But anyways, I just wanna thank all the volunteers, because we really had a huge community effort to get that ice rink down, or that liner down, so.
Well, it's a good learning experience. Well, I think we got good ideas on how to make it a little more efficient.
For next time, yeah. So, anyways, I just wanted to say thanks to our community for that, that was a great thing, and our public works team, and Brianna, of course, so. The next big thing is the hot tub we've been talking about for, well, last month it went out. She was told by training that she could not get in one until April. Brianna has called every place in Minnesota, and she found one, and it shipped out yesterday. Should be here by the end of the week, and actually, Egg and cooling, put it in. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll get it installed. Sorry, not a hot tub, the boiler for the hot tub. The boiler went out, and sorry, not a new hot tub.
We wish.
Not a brand new hot tub, the boiler will be here. So, we were originally looking at April before it was gonna come, and which means our hot tub would have been down until April, which is, this is our busiest time, obviously, with the cold weather. So, steam room, we're still trying to figure out what to do. She's met with a few different companies about looking at infrared saunas versus the steam room. So we will have a little bit more thorough talks about how we're gonna go about this, and what we're gonna do, and I wanna get some more firm pricing back before I present it to you guys. The heater, the boiler was $1,600, so I told her to go ahead and get it done story, but this project for this steam room is gonna be a lot more than that. So, that is gonna take some time before we can figure out what we're gonna do there.
And that's completely bad right now.
Yeah, the whole, I mean, everything, it's not one part, it's the whole thing needs to either be replaced, or like I said, we talked about infrared saunas, just based on popularity we've seen lately, based on the cost, it's a third of the price of what a steam room is, and it's one unit. We're not sitting there fixing parts constantly or anything like that. So, that's kind of what we are looking at this point in time.
Have you taken a survey, or have you been visited?
I'm actually talking to kind of the members that use the steam room. You know, we only have a very limited members that actually use the steam room. It's not very many, to be honest with you, or that use it, so, we really are thinking, and she's talking with other gyms, and it seems like there's a lot of places that are going towards the infrared sauna instead of the steam room. So, and one of the, like I said, the big perks is a lot less maintenance to it, and a third of the price. So, hopefully by next meeting, I'll have some numbers for you guys, and if we are replacing, what?
Both options.
Yeah, and if we are replacing the whole system, right now, we're probably looking at 15 to 20,000, so it might not be this year unless it's what the council wants to move forward with. We might be looking at budgeting for it for next year or the year after. So, either way, it's not gonna be a fast fix at this point in time. So, other than that, she's got swimming lessons, she's been crazy busy over there with that, volleyball's been going on, lots of activities, classes, weight loss challenge starts next week. So a lot of activity there, which is awesome to see. still looking to hire. We're still struggling. She did get one front desk, which is helping out for opening in the morning, so. Public Works, snow removal, and they've been on that 24/7 since our last big snow. They'll be out again tomorrow at 5:30 or 5 AM. I did post it. Also got it on radio too, so we're hoping vehicles will get moved. We're starting to get stricter with towing vehicles. We've had to tow a couple this last storm. So, and it's gonna continue to be that way. We just, with so much snow out there, we just don't have the option to wait 2-3 days for vehicles to get removed. So,
I agree.
that's the big thing there. Our police department is starting to really get up and get going on helping with that too, so. That's what they're at. Our liquor store, I sent you guys some numbers. We did awesome over the holidays, Jerry and her team. Really great sales, so, I think she said $9,000 on just the Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then 5,000 on New Year's Eve, so awesome sales for that. She did inventory over New Year's Day when we were closed, and once the inventory is done, the auditors will come in and hopefully, well, it'll be a few months before we know what our profit or loss is, so, yeah, I think they've been doing a great job there. Police department, Jody's still out. We're hoping on a tentative date of January 22nd, I believe. But he has some doctor's appointments, and I don't know if we're gonna make that date. So, the Northern County Sheriff's Department has been covering. They've helped out our officers, when they needed it. But we have some issues with Jody not being able to come back part-time either because of the workman's comp that he's under. So it interferes with him being able to come back and do some administrative duties.
What do you, I mean, what's any ideas on there? Is they, I mean, have you talked to him much, or what do you feel like, or?
With Jody?
Yeah.
Yeah, he comes in, he's in stay. We've been touching, it's just based on he's back at, physical therapy. So, you know, the problem with, I mean, he's feeling good, he's moving, he's doing things. The problem is, as a police officer, we don't really have an option to come back at 50% or 60% or 80%. And I mean, you have to be at that 100% mark. And unfortunately, I mean, he could come back and do administrative duty, but then we're having 2 officers on at a time, and it doesn't make sense, because if the call was to come out, or if he was to patrol and something happened, you know, and so our other officers have been great. They're still covering and everything's working, and they've taken on the administrative roles as much as possible. So as of now, we don't have any issues. We haven't ran into issues. It's just kind of waiting until he's back. Any other questions on the departments?
Would it be beneficial to, swap squad cars every other day or every week, just to keep the miles down on the new one? And the only reason I ask is because the Charger's been sitting stagnant for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
That's all we'll drive. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's no about it.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I.
Just a thought.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea.
Would be a big no idea.
So, and right now our officers are doing like a noon to midnight shift. So, but they have, I mean, for example, the other day there was an accident on 9-200 and, you know, Bruce got called out and was out there by 10 a.m. So they will go to the call-outs, it's just they're trying to get that, and then on weekends they will work till about 2:30. So there's not a ton of overtime hours, but all those hours are covered by our football dollars as well. So we're not, I mean, this isn't costing us more than, yeah.
And like I said, to the sheriff's office, you can tell they're a little bit more prevalent in town. You can see
Yeah.
their copies laying around a little bit more too, so they've been helping out.
Yeah, and even, we've had some other officers actually cover shifts for our officers, like a weekender, you know, for example, Bruce's wife had a baby and Steve had a surgery, so they've been out helping out, just covering their specific shifts as well, so, yeah. Actually, just let you know, just fine. So one fun drive, I just wanted to remind my community, this has been done every year, it's from Gary Cares. Donation sheets were all sent out to the community, but we do have extra ones at City Hall. If you'd like to make a donation, I think there's a list of 15 different organizations on there to make a donation to. You can do it at City Hall. We do have envelopes and we'll get it to the Gary Cares. So I just wanted to put that out there. Deadline is February 28th of 2022. Housing rehabilitation grant, I just wanted to give you guys an update. We did make it through the first round, which is great news. So now we're going into the final round of it. So hopefully, it seems like we've been talking about this forever. But we should know March, April timeframe if we receive that $600,000 and then we get started on that rehab grant. So, it's good news out of all the cities that we've been making through that. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention and thank one of our community members, Ted Onson, put together a history of fires in the county and sent it to me today. I'm gonna put it on our website, and we're working on getting up there, but it's pretty cool. It starts back in the 1800s and it talks about our fire department, not just fires, but major events, grants we got, when we purchased new equipment. So it's pretty cool. So you've got newspaper clips, articles, things like that in it. So I am gonna get that up on our City of Ada website. It's really big, so it has to be broken down into some chunks, but, just wanted to kind of thank him for doing that, and, think it's pretty cool for our community to see, so. That's all I got on those.
New business, Kaleidoscope guests, for January, Crystal and Sean. 9 o'clock Thursday.
I'll say yeah for Crystal.
She might not be able to actually, thinking about it. She might not be able to.
Yeah, I kind of figured, well, she's not here today anyway, so it doesn't do a lot of good.
So maybe we should switch. Josh wanna do it,
Sure.
Okay.
and then we can switch them.
Sean and Josh. And then, we'll do Crystal and Casey in February. Okay. EDA, revolving loan grant match request.
So I would like to ask the council, I applied for this grant in 2020 and we received the funds. It's for a revolving loan fund that we do where we have our 1% no interest loans to either new or existing businesses in town. This funding comes in and we have to put up some sort of a match. Now, I've talked to our representative at USDA and I'm told we're low on the total goal because we just received a grant 2 years ago. However, in 2020, I was told I was low on the total goal and we received the grant. So I think it's beneficial for us to apply for it. I did send out Excel spreadsheet to you guys so you can see just how many businesses utilize this. So for example, in 2020, we got $50,000 in the grant, and then the city put up 25, so we had 75,000, and within 1 year, we used all of that. We're down to about $15,000 left total in our funds, which is less than one grant that we usually, or one loan that we usually do. With that being said, at this point, it is revolving, so we are getting funds coming back, but I would like to apply. And with that, I need some sort of commitment. I would like to do the exact same thing we did before. I would need $25,000 from our long-term capital and a commitment from the council. I have a resolution actually too, so I forgot that. I sent that out to you. That you guys would agree and then agree to me applying for this grant.
I think we should do it again.
I agree.
And just like in 2020, if you don't get it, we're not out that.
No.
She's only asking if we get approved. And like Ashley said, you know, I've been on EA for all these approvals. It's really helped, and again, we can't say it all, you guys can look at the businesses it's helped, throughout the city, and they're major businesses.
And a lot of new ones too. I mean, new businesses that have started out, which is great. And so I think it's a huge benefit. And then EDA, I should mention also, there's a recommendation from the EDA to the council as well.
So I need a motion to, let Ashley, obviously submit the application, which is already done, if we get approved to utilize 25 grand from our long-term capital.
I'll make that motion. I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion from Sean, second from Josh. Any further discussion or questions? The good thing, and like Ashley says, this is a revolving loan, so as we start getting these paid back, we can reutilize them and hand them out to new businesses, which has been awesome. So I got a motion from Sean, I got a second from Josh to forego the reading of the resolution. By roll call vote, Mike?
Aye.
Scott? Josh? Sean? Resolution 2022-01-01 passes. Next item of business is the KRGB contract, which you guys have in your pamphlets.
So this is the exact same as we've done on previous years. The only changes is a couple of where the ads are allocated towards, but the cost of the contract has not changed. We just reallocated some due to where we felt it was best utilized.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract.
Okay, making a motion from Josh, second from Scott. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Last item of business is the Brady Mart's audit contract.
So this is kind of the same thing. This is to move forward for the 2021 audit. It's with Brady Martz, who we've been with for the previous years. 16,000 is the total, has not changed. Sounds like a lot, but that's what we budgeted every year for. Doesn't move.
And again, it's budgeted.
And it's budgeted, I mean, we planned for this, but I need to sign the contract in order for them to move forward.
So moved. Okay, motion from Sean, second Josh, all in favor? All opposed? Motion passes and then motion to adjourn. Josh? Second from? Second. Sean, all in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.